Well, thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate you taking your time. We know that you guys everyone is just busy, and so we appreciate you taking the time here. So we're going to be talking about what the Planning Committee has been doing. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Planning Committee. I'm Susan Vowels, and I teach in the Business Management Department, and I'm also the chair of the department. And our other co-chair is Andrea Trisciuzzi. I have to just really, I got it, right? And Andrea is our Vice President of Advancement. So I'm going to start the program, and then Andrea is going to close it. And you can't see this, can you? Let me get to where you can see things. Okay, so the purpose of the forum is for communication. It's communication with the Planning Committee. The Planning Committee is a standing committee of the college, so it's permanent. And it has representatives from every area within the college. So there are students, there's faculty, there's staff, there's administrators on that committee. And so our goal is to help to develop strategic plans and priorities for the college, and also to be a really big piece of that communication, so that as we're working on things, that we're communicating with all of our constituents, and then we also take that information back, and it ends up going to the Board of Visitors and Governors. So this communication piece is a really big part of what we do. So our hope is that by going through what we're working on now, that we can get your input, that you can see what we're working on, and we can ideally, feel like we're all going in the same direction as we continue with our strategic plan, and we're enter into the new phase that Andrea is going to tell you about. So I'm starting just by giving you a history of what actually happens in the strategic planning process. And so, since not everybody has been here throughout that process, we thought that was important to cover. Back in 2012, we adopted a new mission and vision and core values. And so this is on our Washington College website. And one of the things we wanted to do before we actually start working on our plan was to figure out, okay, what do? We we wanted to come up with something that was very concise. We got the whole community involved with it, and the Planning Committee as well. And so the mission is actually what we do. So Washington College challenges and inspires emerging citizen leaders to discover lives of purpose and passion. And so everything that going forward with the strategic plan needs to map back to what is it that we do. The other piece I wanted to point out is the vision. And so our vision is what we hope to achieve. What is the change that we're hoping to see in the world as a result of what we do? So the enduring values of Washington College, critical thinking, effective communication, and moral courage move the world. So as I go through the elements of the strategic plan, you're going to see they map back to this. And then also the core values help to provide some more texture to it. So with the strategic plan, that was actually adopted in 2014. So we're moving forward in time. And it's called Achieving the Distinctive Character of a Washington College Education. It consists of 8 goals. And I'm going to go through each of the goals because I think it's valuable to take a look at what they are. So our first goal is to reaffirm the college's core mission of providing a superior liberal arts education to prepare our students for the challenges of the 21st century. Goal number 2, we want to expand teaching and learning opportunities both within and beyond the Washington College classroom that are distinctive and that take advantage of the college's unique setting. Goal number 3, position the college as a leader in the multidisciplinary study of the environment. Goal number 4, attract, enroll, and retain outstanding students. Goal number 5, support and recruit excellent teacher scholars and excellent staff committed to the distinctive character of a Washington College education. Number 6, we want to continue to strengthen our mutually beneficial partnerships with the community, and that there we're talking about our Chestertown community, our local Kent County community, to advance the mission of the college. And goal number 7, to provide a well-designed, distinctive, and robust co-curricular program. There's an 8, but I'm going to pause here just for a second, because what I want to emphasize is that in the mission, in our core values, and our vision, as well as these goals, every one of us should see ourselves reflected somewhere, because all of us end up contributing to achieving our mission, and that's going forward is achieving the mission through the goals of the strategic plan. So we're all in there. We're all in there to provide support for these students. And the goal number 8 is really important, and that's why we're here today, actually. So goal number 8 is that we have to generate the resources that are sufficient for the realization of the college's mission and the enactment of the strategic plan. So we need resources in order to move from where we were in 2012 to where we want to go as a result of the goals that we've set out for ourselves as a community in the strategic plan. So one of the questions is, if we're going to generate resources, how do we know how much that's going to be? And so I'm going to take you through just a little bit of the process that the planning committee, the past planning committees have gone through in actually fleshing out the strategic plan and turning it into an implementation plan. And we'll just go back to the first goal. So the first goal has to do with our mission of providing a superior liberal arts education appropriate to the 21st century. So for every goal, objectives were developed. And so for those objectives, can be several different objectives that help us to really understand where we want to go with the goals. I'll give you an example. So for goal 1, objective A is that we want to develop a college-wide curriculum that's appropriate for the 21st century. So in other words, we have a college-wide curriculum. What we want to do is just take another look at it and see that it actually does what we feel that it should do to recommit to our liberal education vision. So that's kind of a broad statement. So how do we actually achieve that objective? And for each objective, there are tactics. Okay, so here's an example of a tactic. So the tactic for this particular objective, which supports this particular goal, is that we want to maintain a student-faculty ratio of 12:1. And there's a coordinator, the provost. What you see with these tactics, it gives us several things. First, it gives us something measurable. So we can tell, are we 12:1, 13:1, 11:1? We can tell where we are. The other thing with the tactics is that there's someone who is responsible to coordinate that tactic and kind of help to make sure that that tactic actually happens. And so in this case, because this has to do with faculty, the coordinator is the provost, the chief academic officer of the college. The third thing that the tactics give us is that we can cost them. And so whenever I say we, I'm using like the broad we, right? So it's the planning committee's present and past, and the community and everybody all together. So, but we in concert developed, looking through the tactics, came up with the best estimate of what those tactics were going to cost based on the information at the time and the particular tactics. When all those tactics were added up, for all those 8 goals and all the objectives and tactics, we came up with $285 million. So $285 million in order to achieve everything that was in the actual implementation plan that supported the strategic plan. Several things have already happened, and actually, I say several, there's actually many things that have happened so far that have brought pieces of the strategic plan to fruition. And I just wanted to cover just a few of them, just so you kind of get an idea that things have been moving along. One of the things is new faculty lines. So there have been a significant number of new faculty lines added. And again, going back to that tactic, maintaining that 12:1 student-faculty ratio, which supports the objective about the college-wide curriculum, which supports the first goal. So you can see all these things, they all align back, and that supports our mission of helping to develop emerging citizen leaders. So new faculty lines has been an accomplishment. Cost of living adjustments. So it's different now than it was when I first came here 15 years ago. The cost of living is built into the base budget. So it's in there just like heat and just like all those other things you have to run the organization. And that goes back to the goal. We want to recruit, support, retain excellent teacher scholars and excellent staff. And so part of that is making sure that everybody can count on this cost of living adjustment. Also, significant money has been raised for scholarships. So there's $17.5 million for scholarships. And 5 of those were for Dan the Det and George's Brigade. And the last thing I want to just briefly talk about is new and renovated facilities. So we've got this beautiful Cromwell Hall down the street as an academic building. We've got Corsica as a brand new dorm. The Career Center has been renovated. So a lot of things have already happened, but we still have more things that we need to do. And in order to do those, the last thing I'm going to talk about before we get to Andrea is talk about, well, how do we actually fund this? How has this been funded? How is it going to be funded going into the future? One piece is with government. So, for instance, the state of Maryland supports us, has supported us on some initiatives. We also can do financing, so we can borrow money. And for instance, with Cromwell, part of that was funded through financing. Operating funds. So there are strategies to enable funds to come out of the operating budget that can help to support initiatives. That's a really big topic all in itself, and so we're going to come back to you in the spring, and we want to talk about that in detail in the spring. But the last, and where the bulk of the resources are going to come from is from philanthropy. So it's coming from gifts, coming from donors who are committed to the college and want to support it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And so now I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Andrea.
So, philanthropy. I don't know how many of you know what the definition of a comprehensive campaign is, so I'll start there. A comprehensive campaign is a finite period of time during which everything you raise from a private source is counted as part of the goal. So we're in a comprehensive campaign. We are in what is also known as the silent phase, also known as the leadership phase. And what that means is you're trying to line up as many of your big gifts before you announce. You need to get a sense of how much you can raise, and you find that out during your silent phase based on how many large, generally 7-figure gifts, some cases 8-figure gifts that you're able to line up. So, why? Why do that? Well, the strategic plan, basically. At this point, you want a guiding principle. You want something that the board, the faculty, your staff, everyone is behind and is engaged with, and we can also then promote with our alumni. And we have a strategic plan, and the board enthusiastically embraced it and charged the advancement team with raising money to help actualize as much of it as possible through, as much as you can do through philanthropy. What I just said. So, Susan mentioned there were $285 million worth of costs associated with all the tactics. Now, let's, first of all, another thing to be aware of, tactics can shift. You can have a tactic that worked 3 years ago, and then over time you look at it and you say, wait, maybe we don't need that, or that's not the best use of our resources. So there can be some adjustment in that. However, when looking at those $285 million worth of needs, the original working goal that the board came up with in spring 2014 was $221.7 million. Depending on who you talk to, it got rounded up to a nice little $225 million, but it's been in that area. What I did when I came on was work with the existing staff, the board, to really do a deep dive on what we call prospects, people who are potential philanthropic investors in our institution. And what we saw was, given what's been given so far and where we think we can go, we can raise $150 million right now, because most campaigns cannot go on forever. People get bored, people get donor fatigue, so you want a finite period, as I mentioned before. Our finite period would be 8 years. Most are 7, but ours is going to be 8 because we've had a leadership transition, and a lot of places need to take a kind of a slow down a little during that time until you can pick back up. We started counting on July 1st, 2012. And our plan is to end counting on June 30th, 2020. So that's an 8-year period. And we are looking at the public launch. So when we start really pushing this out there, we have materials that are going out, we are PR, articles, all of that marketing aspect of it would be on May 12th, starting with a big celebration here on campus for the community, for our faculty, for our staff, for our board members, and our top donors. Stay tuned for that, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking at roasting pigs, among other things, I know, because Bill Schindler's all into this now. So here's what we've raised to date. As of today, we've raised $67 million. To get to 150, we still have another 83 to go. How do we do that? I mentioned pipeline. Pipeline is the most critical thing. You can have the most wonderful idea in the world, and it is not an if you build it, they will come. They actually need to be somewhere in the vicinity in order to get them there. And right now, we did a deep dive this summer on our prospect list, and we discovered that there were basically 96 gifts that we felt really good about, that we thought we could get over the next 4 years. And the reason we felt really good about them was because we've already had relationships with these individuals, and they've already given us money. Now, your average rule of thumb when you're raising money is that for every 3 people you ask, you'll get 1 gift. Now, this group is actually a higher probability group. With this group, you're pretty much going to get at least 2 out of every 3. So from this group, although the total we came up with was $75 million, I'm not going to sit there and tell you we're going to get $75 million from this group. I think we'll get closer to 50 or 60 million over these 4 years. The money won't all come in 4 years. We're talking 5-year pledge periods. So we could be seeing money coming in to the college. If the last pledge is made in 2020, you could see them as late, the money actually cash getting here in 2025. The other piece of this, we also found out that we have, which is great, a huge opportunity. We have about 500 names of individuals who are alumni or current parents who therefore have a natural relationship with our institution, but we haven't been cultivating them that well over the years. And therefore, they're not ready. We can't really say, oh yeah, we know they're going to give us money. We do feel that there's a high probability that a portion of them will over the next several years, and then over time, they're sort of the gifts for the future as well. Now, as you said, it's 500 who have all been rated at 100,000 or more. Their first gifts for many of them will not be 100,000. It will be their first time giving a major gift. They'll give us 25, maybe 50. They have a much lower ratio. I would say 1 out of every 4 would give to us. So we're estimating about $20 million from this group when you crunch all the numbers. Are there any questions? Because I see one person looking. Miles, did you have were you? No. Okay. And then this doesn't include things like the Mellon Foundation, like the Kellogg Foundation, major foundations to who we've gone in the past and we believe that we'll be going back to during the course of this campaign. The other thing is our board. Board giving is in a really critical barometer of how much you can raise. So you generally, with an institution of our size, you see what the board can do and you say, okay, that's probably about 20 to 25% of what we can raise. If we were smaller, we'd actually be saying 30 or 35. If we were huge, like a Johns Hopkins, you're looking at about 15 because they have many other sources of funding. But for an institution of our size, rule of thumb, 20 to 25% of the entire goal is what the board can give you. So, where are we with the board? So far, the board has given us $18 million. We also, 19, sorry. that's right, I keep forgetting there was one gift we just recently booked. We have another $7 to $8 million in the pipeline that we are very, very confident about closing within the next 3 or 4 months. So that will put us at about 26, 27 million. And then you still have 3 more years of the campaign with new board members who are coming on, and a lot of board members, well, not a lot, but a number of your lead board members will oftentimes give you a last gift to sort of give the campaign a bit of a loft and a boost. So we feel very good about saying and the board has actually said, we need to give 30 million. So we're on our way there and we're very close. So that is 20% of 150. So what do donors give to? In a comprehensive campaign, it's basically everything. They give to current use. So that's money we can spend right now. And it goes to the Washington Fund, or it can be designated. It can be designated for an academic program to be spent now, or for current use scholarships to be spent now. They give to capital. They give to buildings. Some people love buildings and some people don't, but that's another key element. And they give to endowment. They give to something that they can permanently name. These tend to be somewhat larger gifts. For us, a minimum endowment gift is $100,000. But then that gift exists in perpetuity at our institution. And it provides budget relief, actually, in the long run for the operating budget, because the funds that are there that might be for a faculty chair or for endowed scholarships or for programs ultimately help and join the funds that are in the operating budget and give us more flexibility. So this is my favorite slide, courtesy of Mark Dykman. Here's what the original numbers looked like. We were going to raise 40 million in current use, we were going to do 85 in capital, and we were going to do 96 in endowment. Here's what we've raised so far on those. Oh, and again, endowment includes chairs and scholarships and program funds, and, well, capital, you'll see, had a lot of buildings in it. Here's what we've raised so far. So we've raised 20 in current use. We've raised a little over 5 in capital, mostly for the boathouse and for Cromwell. And then we've raised 40 in endowment gifts. So, what are we looking at in terms of adjusting? Where would the numbers shift from 221.7 to 150? You can tell that most of it, this is the part I like to do, is in capital. That's the number that's shifting the most. Endowment is almost staying flat. There's a little bit of movement in current use, but there's a lot of change in capital. What are the changes? So there were adjustments to some projects. Cromwell, we ended up doing more financing on it, for example, and we got government money. The scope, there were reductions sort of in scope for some of the buildings, like the boathouse and the waterfront academic building. So right there, that was $15 million in reductions. Then there are deferred projects. When the planning committee got together and looked at some of these tactics, one of the things that leapt out was a field house for $20 million. A couple of things. We don't have a donor right now. There is no $10 million donor to name this building, which is what you need as your lead gift. And quite honestly, most other field houses that are going up are actually more. So do we have to even go back and look at the scope of this? And the other was additional academic building, and that was based on the idea that as we grew, we were going to need more academic space. There were a number of ideas about it. Some people said science, some people said art with science. This was discussed at the planning committee level. However, we kind of need to go back and do a really refined audit of what our spaces are, what they are going to be when you have the waterfront building, when you have phase 2 of Cromwell. So what do we still need, depending on what the growth, that the projected enrollment will be? And so at the moment, this building, at least within the next 4 or 5 years, is not needed in terms of actual academic space. And again, we don't have a donor at that level to name a building like that right now. So that's $35 million deferred. Then there were other projects that were in there that really should not have been in philanthropy. They're part of the strategic plan. They are not being walked away from, but they get funded in another manner. So IT, donors don't fund IT. It's sort of not what floats their boat. I'm sorry, I know how, and it's our necessary part of business. For us not to update our IT because we're waiting for a donor to come, we'd be falling behind. We can't do that, and we can't afford to do that. We need to find a way to fund it through an operating budget. Things like COLA now are baked in to our operating budget going forward. It's not a let's see how well we do this year and maybe we can do it. And that again, donors don't fund incremental salary raises. That's, again, it's not something they feel they can get their arms around, that can be permanent, that, I mean, they know we need it, but they feel that's part of our job, running this institution to take care of. And that's another 20 million there. So, what about some of these deferred priorities? What if we go back to some of the capital things or add more endowment? Well, we have a very good opportunity to run 2 back-to-back campaigns. Why? Because we have a major donor who would make the leadership gift to the next campaign number 2. We're expecting that donor to determine whether they're going to do this sometime between 2020, 2022. It's too late to count into this campaign, but perfect to get us to launch a new campaign. Plus, we have those 500 donors that we're building relationship with now. They may not give as much, they may not give the 1 out of 3 now, but by the next campaign, if we've done our jobs and we're working on it, I can tell you that the gift officers are out there meeting people every week, then we'll have that pipeline ready. And so we'll take a year's break and we'll go raise more money and start a new campaign. I'm going to stop now and see if there are any questions, and because I have this thing, I can go back and forth between slides, and we can go back and look at something if you have a question, or if you have a question of one of Susan's slides too. Yes?
Is that second campaign prospect, is that an individual, or is that a foundation or corporate?
I'm really, because of the nature of this, I don't really want to go there, but it is a private source of funding. Sorry.
And what do they want to fund?
Endowment. If they do something, it will be endowment. Probably scholarship endowment.
Can you say what are some of the capital projects that didn't get deferred or sourced?
Yes, the waterfront, the finishing the boathouse, which we got about another 900,000 to go on that, and then phase 2 of the it's not going to be called Cromwell because we need to sell the name on that too. So the continuation of the building that is now known as Cromwell, but you got it. And that one is going to cost us probably, in terms of philanthropy, that's about 7 million or so, because we're expecting about 3 million of that to come from the state. And I think that's it. I mean, there might be a little bit in terms of renovation to Kane, because instead of building a $20 million plus, where we need to go in there and do a little bit of fixing so that it can remain viable for 10 years or so going forward at least. Yes? Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. I'm sorry I came in just a little bit late. So Susan noted that faculty lines were an accomplishment.
Yes.
But I'm now sitting on tenure and promotion, and we've halted all of those lines. So those lines are halted, and incremental hires are not funded funder priorities. So where are we going to get the funds to do that? That's question one. The second question is that I've talked to 2 alumni who've said that they have some gifts to give, but they were told that the office was not interested in accepting funds for these projects. And then the third is how do we, I'm sorry if I sound hostile. I don't mean to be, I'm just asking questions. And then the last one is that do we anticipate there being any fallout with our relationship with Mellon as a result of the sandbox closure?
Absolutely, I can take questions 3 and 2. I think we're going to have to. What was halted?
The incremental line proposals.
Okay, so Joe.
Yeah, the strategic plan target is 12-1 ratio, and at present we are, I think, 11.4 to 1. So we are overly, I don't want to say we're overly staffed, but we have a richer faculty and student composition than the goal calls for. They haven't been halted, they've been slowed down until the enrollment tracks up, and then they'll be authorized to proceed forward.
Great.
So it's not like we're in a hiring freeze forever, but the commitment is to maintain a 12-1 ratio, and we're staffed a little more richly than that right now. So we're slowing down until the enrollments catch up, and then we'll get back into an active allocation of additional. But we have, to the point about incremental lines, I think Emily had charted it, and I think it's 14.5 lines since 2012 have been authorized incremental lines, largely through consolidating a lot of part-time faculty appointments into full-time tenure track positions. So since the plan tracking started, which goes back to 2012, I think it's 14.5 incremental faculty lines.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, could
And
I?
Michelle, in the financial model, in the out years, not next year, but the out years, we do bake in an additional faculty line for every 13 additional students.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
And in the plan, there are chairs in the plan. And when I talk about endowment, originally the number was 18. We brought it down to 14, mostly because we don't have enough donors who can give $2 million.
This is for that chart, that fun chart that populates with different blues. So there are 14 endowed chairs in that.
14 million.
14 million, gotcha.
$14 million. It was originally 18 in the original plan that was established when I came here. We've raised about $4.5 million so far, and as I said, it had a lot to do with it takes $2 million to endow them, and so there's a limited number of donors that we have right now who can endow a chair. Then probably more that can endow scholarships, and if they endow scholarships, and that goes to our unfunded tuition discount, that then provides more money and more flexibility. Did you, and Susan?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The other thing, Michelle, thanks for asking that question,
Yeah.
because the other thing that happens is that when we look at this, we're not looking at just an instance in time, or just one semester, or just 1 year. We're looking at this whole period. And so when I was talking about the accomplishments, I don't have the list in front of me, but there have been new lines in biology, environmental science and studies, and business management, and a lot of different places. So there's been a lot of progress already, and that was why I thought that was significant. Yeah. Okay, great.
Okay, question number 2 was 2 donors who wanted to give money and they were told they couldn't.
That's correct.
Do you know what it was for?
I do.
Can you share?
No.
Maybe later?
Maybe.
Because there are
I don't know if we should be. I guess I'm asking about a point of view on priorities. That perhaps these 2 donors were not interested in, or we were not interested in their priorities, or they weren't interested in our priorities. So perhaps the global question is about reconciling somewhere between those 2.
and sometimes you can't, and sometimes you can, and it depends on the donor. And it also depends on If it's not one of the priorities that this institution has decided is important, and it's going to cost us more money to accept that money, because we're going to have to support that program in some way, in addition to whatever their gift is, we can't necessarily accept it then. And it is something that then, the decision-making, at least now, going forward, something like that comes up, it's going to go before me, the provost, the CFO, and depending the size of the gift, the president. Because you don't want to turn down gifts, but you also don't want to take a gift that keeps on taking. And you've got to figure out where that is. So without knowing what those gifts are, and it would be wonderful if the donors, if it's explained in a way that is gracious and grateful, and therefore the potential donor can understand why. So yeah, that is a tension that can exist in raising money. The last one was...
Melon and Sandbox?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest about that. I don't think there's going to be fallout with Mellon. Mellon has had a very, very successful relationship with this institution. And no foundation has 100% giving rate with any one project. They've given to a lot of things here that have taken off like gangbusters. And the idea is that Sandbox isn't necessarily completely going away. At least the last I heard, it was going to sort of be part of that, the CES science, art piece of it. It wouldn't be able, it was taking about $200,000 a year to fund. We don't have the donors. We have tried to raise money. Alex tried to raise money for it. We didn't get any traction with outside donors except for a small group. And therefore, I know that the provost is looking at, is there a way to enhance one position so that it can take over running Sandbox? But we're going to have to look at it as a project-by-project basis, where if there's a really interesting project and there's a donor who wants to fund it, then we'll do that project. But it was very much, I know Alex sent out many proposals working with our office to a number of sources, and the money didn't come in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Because you can tell we're eager and happy to answer them. No. All right. Then what next? There's my slide. So we're going to have the spring forums on the operating budget, and that will sort of be run by the Office of Finance and Administration, and I'm not looking at Joe because he's out of there, and he's happy. But I'm looking at Laura. And the other thing is that Susan and I are very eager to come to you, to come to your departments, to come to divisions, and share this PowerPoint with you and answer questions in a smaller environment. And sometimes with more time, questions arise that you didn't think of in the moment. You can look at the strategic plan on the Provost site, and it will show all those goals. And then with more questions that come up, the Planning Committee would love to know about them. And so we ask that you feel free to email us and send us those questions so we can bring them to the committee and have that kind of discussion. Or also, and there are a few people here who are on the Planning Committee. Could you stand, please? But here are the rest of the Planning Committee. So either these individuals or anyone else that's on that list. Bring us your questions, bring us your comments, bring us your thoughts. And the whole point of this, as Susan said, is about communication. So I think, unless there are more questions, there are copies of the strategic plan on that table in the back. And Susan and I thank you for spending part of your afternoon on a beautiful day like this with us. And we hope you enjoy your walk back if you get to be outside to anywhere you're going.